Okay guys, so today we're going to be going over new warfare technologies, the different kinds of weapons that were used during World War I. Now some of them are going to include the machine gun, poison gas, submarines, also known as U-boats, airplanes, and tanks. Submarines, they were used to attack merchant ships, the Germans, the shore patrol, they were British, and it includes unrestricted submarine warfare. That's going to be very, very important when it comes to the United States entrance into World War I. They were also used for nuclear weapons launching platforms from hidden locations. You're going to see that later on in the Cold War. Okay, so those were submarines, and basically they are under the sea boats, undersea boats, as the Germans would call them. The next one is sea mines. They're going to look familiar from the movie Finding Nemo, right? It says they were used by the British to close German harbors and to keep the German Navy bottled up, right? So they would hide these mines under the sea, so whenever merchants were traveling, they would, explode. Dreadnoughts, these are your massive battleships that were extremely heavy and slow. It says massive warships with long-range guns were a symbol of the of a country's power. Later on, they're going to be replaced by aircraft carriers, and recently have been found limited use in modern warfare. So that's a dreadnought. The next one is a machine gun. This is a stationary instrument of destruction designed for defense, not offense. So you're going to see how a lot of them were in the trenches firing these machine guns, and they fired up to 300 rounds per minute. Going back to like the Civil War, where you just had your rifles and they were very primitive, now you're going to have machine guns, which is an increase in technology. Then you have tanks. It's primitive, slow, ungainly vehicles to use against machine guns and trenches. Some of these would go 4 miles an hour. That's how fast they would go. So now you're going to have fast-moving technological machines that spearhead offensive movements, right? So we're kind of done with tanks. The next one is gas, or poison gas, or mustard gas. It was used as a weapon of mass destruction to soften up an area before advancing. Tomorrow we're going to go over how different kinds of gas were used, especially in the trenches, so that way you can move in and take over. And most of the time it was counterproductive. If the wind was blowing the wrong way, then your troops would actually get that mustard gas instead of your opponent. Now, it has been outlawed by international agreement, so every country has vowed to not use poison gas in war anymore because of the consequences that it had. And it says Iraq under Saddam Hussein allegedly gassed the Kurds, and supposedly it was used in Japan in a terrorist attack in Japan as well. Now the flamethrower was used to attack trenches and clear out the defenders by shooting liquid fire. That's a flamethrower. And physiologically, it was a horrible weapon to use on the enemy. We're going to see this again when we get to Vietnam. The Zeppelin, right? A Zeppelin is a blimp. It's an observation of enemy positions and movements. That's what it was used for, but since it was so big and so slow, it became not good during war. Airplanes were used to observe the enemy positions, and air-to-air combat. This is the first time we see dogfights in the air. And it was also used to bomb the enemy behind their lines or on the home front. We would actually put machine guns on the airplanes and shoot them down. Total warfare. This is propaganda to motivate the population. It was changing the industrial machine to meet the needs of the military. So now it's the whole country in the war, and everybody's doing something to help out in the war. That is total warfare, when the whole country is involved. The next one is a draft. The first time we used the draft is during World War I, and it was initiated to meet the needs of the military in a global war. Right, so a draft is whenever people are selected to go to war, kind of like a lottery. Now, trench warfare. Earlier I was talking about trench warfare. What is this? A trench is kind of like a ditch. It says the war between Britain, France, and Germany, the most important front, was fought from hundreds of miles in layers of trenches. And here you can see that these are ditches where the soldiers would actually be in. In the middle, you're going to have no man's land, and then on the other side, you're going to have another trench. So basically, World War I was fought in these holes in the ground. Okay, and you can see that here. No man's land is the middle part, and then one side of the trenches is here, and then the other side would be on the opposite end. Okay, so the machine guns would be layered on one edge, and then they would just be shooting out the other way. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you all tomorrow.